It's not the house that's haunted. It's your son.
What's your favorite scary movie?
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
What's going on, my spooky people? Welcome back to the Slashers in Sync podcast, and I hope you guys enjoyed last week's episode where we talked about Michael Myers versus Jason Voorhees, not just from like a narrative standpoint, but also from a who would win in a fight standpoint. That was episode 54, so make sure to go check that out if y'all haven't. But on today's episode, Marvelous and I are going to be going right back into movie reviews, and we're going to be taking a look at Stephen King's 2024's Salem Lot. So that should be fun to talk about, and let's go ahead and get into that right now. So joining me as always is my lovely co-host, the beautiful, the smartest person on the planet, Marva. How are you doing?
I love how I completely dissociated when you gave those kind of compliments. No, it's overhyped. Thank you.
Well, they are true.
No,
but...
not really. Definitely not. There's definitely people who are smarter than me. Definitely people who are more attractive than me. Shut up.
Not debatable. So, jumping into Salem's Lot.
Okay. That's not a smooth transition, by the way.
It is a transition regardless.
Okay. Okay.
Salem's Lot. You and I watched this. We loved it.
Yeah.
And then we went on the internet and saw that it's like, what, 34% Rotten Tomatoes or something?
I think less. So it was like 28.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah,
and
it was,
that was
strikingly different.
That was to our surprise.
Mm-hmm.
But I say this all the time. As much as I look at Rotten Tomatoes as a way to kind of get a gauge of what a movie is looking like, especially from the audience score, not so much the critic score, I'm still like someone who thoroughly enjoyed Halloween 81, the original sequel. And I know a lot of people don't. I know you didn't either.
That was a little weird. I didn't have the nostalgia that you did with the film, but I mean, it's okay.
And funny enough, for Salem's Lot is actually the opposite. The critics have this rated higher. The audience doesn't. Which that could also be because Salem's Lot, there is an original film or TV series out there.
There's like one form of adaptation out there.
Yeah, so that there could be just fans of the book, and not just that, but fans of that original adaptation. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people, I'm not going to say they're wrong, but in this sense, like some people could hold nostalgia over.
Yep.
But I haven't seen the original, so I don't know. At least if I did, it was like years ago. Mm-hmm. But regardless of that, you and I had a good time, and we've been watching a lot of Stephen King stuff recently. Like a lot.
A lot of Stephen King, a lot of horror, a lot of like psychological horror. I think you and I went through like a whole bend of doing slashers and like gory movies.
Yeah.
And like borderline torture porn, but not really.
Yeah.
Right now, though, we've seemed to pivot back to Stephen King and like psychological horrors. And we always go through like underlying arcs. There are even moments where like you and I purge from horror movies for like a short period of time, and then we jump back into it. So it just depends on like what catches our attention enough to jump back into it.
The Mist fucked us up.
The Mist for sure. Watching it a second time still fucked me up. I was so mad watching it a second time because I knew what was gonna happen. I had no sense of hope. No sense of hope, but it's okay. This movie was a little different though. Mind you, I have been introduced to the Stephen King's like adaptations through like It, the original It, and the newer adaptation through The Mist. I think I also got introduced to like another one of his more...
Stand By Me.
No, I didn't watch Stand By Me. There was like one more adaptation that he had from like book to movie or book to TV show.
Oh, before you started dating me?
Before I started dating you in general, that I watched and I liked, and I knew he was infamous for having a very twisted mind and bringing like horror to life, which I always thought was very interesting, and it sparked my curiosity.
Yeah, because Stand By Me, even though we watched that recently, or you watched like half of it, that's not necessarily a horror film. It's a mystery and a thriller, but it's not like a...
It's still twisted enough.
Yeah, but it's not like a horror film.
No.
Misery was another one you watched too.
Misery was another one that we recently watched together. Yeah, it was a movie that I had been meaning to watch for a while because of all the different like homages throughout.
And as you can tell, listening about, we've seen a lot of Stephen King recently.
Yeah. So we're literally checking it off a list at this moment. Sorry, guys. But I guess Salem's Lot really spoke out to me because I noticed an ongoing trend of like the uproar of vampires. What I mean by like uproar is like very similar to the early 2000s. So not only are we following the fashion sense of the early 2000s, but also the obsession that happened in the early 2000s involving vampires. But this isn't the kind of vampires that I grew up with, right? It's not the Edward Cullen going against the grain type of vampire. It's the classic, this is an undead being. There is one master who's like the queen bee or like the king bee, whatever the fuck you want to call it, creates a hive of their own by causing terror throughout an entire city and essentially builds their coven, for lack of better words, by preying on the locals. Sunlight is a no-go, constantly needs blood, sleeps in a coffin. I shit you not, I think within the last like 4 months, you and I have watched a lot of like vampire films that have been made in the 2020s, and all of them encapsulate that very like Dracula-esque storytelling of a vampire, which I like.
Nosferatu, Abigail, Salem's Lot.
There's a whole lot more that's not coming to mind right now, but we've watched a decent amount. And you and I, like, I'll always sit back and be like, wow, this is completely different from like Cullen or even from something as simple as like fucking Vampire Diaries.
Well, I'll even go a step further, dude. It's not even just the fact that the media themselves is covering horror or covering vampires and horror again. Because they even look Sinners too with Michael B. Jordan. That's got vampires in it. Abigail, we just said, Nosferatu. Now, I think also The Invitation was not...
Yeah, it was vampires.
The girl, right, who meets her long lost... That opening, to put that in the trailer, that was so stupid. Yeah. That made me immediately just go, that girl deserves whatever happens to her. Like, how are you going to travel overseas off of somebody you just met through like a 23andMe? That's like... Anyways, a tangent. Anyways, but yeah, there's been a lot of vampire stuff in horror recently, but not just that. You and I, on our own time, have recently started rewatching Vampire Diaries. We also watched... Twilight recently with a couple of our IRL friends.
I'm still barely on season 1. You finished the whole rewatch.
You get my whole point. It's like we got vampires like all over the place in our mind. We do. Yeah, so we do. I've even been seeing like the whole TikTok like scare with like the
vampires in New Orleans.
Yeah, New Orleans and that taxi or that Uber driver. Like just a lot of like they've been at the forefront recently. You know,
very much so. Very much like caught by media and like social media's attention. Yeah. Which is curious because I know 13, 14-year-old me would be fucking squealing out of like pure joy. But right now, for me, I'm just kind of thinking, what do I know that will keep them away? Not that I'm afraid of them, but just in case. Yeah. Just in case. It's okay. If I die, I die. It's fine.
Well, to get into Salem's Lot, how about you start us off? Because I feel like this movie... I'm not going to say I didn't like it as much as you did, because I think we both liked it a lot.
We did.
I think you had a lot more enjoyment with it, though, as we watched it.
I think so as well. Looking back at it, I think I might have like enjoyed the film a whole lot more than you did. Not to say like you had harsher critiques than me.
We still rated high to get like on our own, but yeah.
But I think like it definitely... did a good job of keeping me enticed.
And it's funny because I'm the one who played it. Yeah. Just to put it on while we were like after eating dinner and like we're folding clothes. And then you start watching it.
And I really got invested.
And then you get like hooked, invested.
I was like screaming. I was yelling. I even told you, no, I can't look. Like
this movie did get me though at one point too. Yeah. Which we'll get into. But,
yeah. Well, I guess like to do what we normally do and like diving into the plot, the intro of the movie is probably one of the most intricate and rather beautiful intros I've seen in a while. Even the credits are really detailed. And once they're done, you see two people in a shop where a man in an accent is negotiating a deal with the other. And what they're negotiating is a delivery. And it's a delivery of a very old and very valuable crate from a shipment coming in late at night. The more, I guess, posh man, who we later come to find out is called Mr. Straker, is explaining to the other how he needs the crate to be handled and where to drop it off and what to do whenever it comes to placing it in the basement, to the point that it seems almost insulting toward the delivery men. An envelope is exchanged between the two, and we know that's definitely like the price that the delivery man's asking for to handle this sort of crate and this sort of delivery, which I'm sure is also another reason why the delivery man is just standing there swallowing the insults, because he knows it's a big payday.
Yeah.
So the movie then pans out to the delivery drivers. It's the original driver from the beginning of the movie with his underling, who are talking about the house, Mr. Straker's house, that they're delivering to now. The previous owners apparently were like Satan worshippers, according to the lead delivery man.
That was a funny thing to like, mention too.
Yeah. That's why they said that the original owners had such a tragic death. We no longer see Mr. Straker, but we see the man he was talking to earlier, the head delivery driver, and another individual in the delivery truck, like I mentioned. They both get ready to deliver the crate as instructed, and I think the lead delivery man even tells his underling, hey, like, we need to make sure we do this to a T, because, like, one, it's a big payday, and two, I don't want to fuck this shit up, plain and simple.
Yeah.
I don't have the best feeling, but let's just get this done and over with. When moving the crate, the duo notice that the box is heavier than anticipated, and one of them actually loses their grip. It makes the crate break, and something rather interesting happens next. You can tell that something has been off, like the energy or the vibe or whatever you want to call it, from the start of the movie, but you don't know where to place it and why that is. When one of the delivery men walk away, the other one hears a voice calling to him to join. The movie then cuts to the young man in his car.
Which is our main character.
So, like, there was a lot of tension and a lot of, like, I thought, in all honesty, there would be a kill at this point, but there wasn't.
Yeah.
And then the movie suddenly cuts to a young man who's sitting in his car, driving through town, noticing everything that has changed and everything that has stayed the same since he's left. He pulls into a lot of a real estate business, and before we see him walk in, we see Mr. Straker, the same man who was striking a deal in the very beginning, put up an unofficial sign for his business as well. The young man walks in and is greeted by the receptionist, who is reading his book. The girl does actually something pretty, not so smart, but something that I know I would do. She doesn't recognize that the man standing in front of him, or in front of her, is the very author that she's reading the book of, and actually ends up roasting his writing. And the business owner walks in and tries to find out what kind of place this young author wants to rent out.
Yeah.
The receptionist is persistent that she's seen this young author's face before, obviously not realizing it's the author of the book that she's reading right now.
Yeah.
And when the older real estate man walks in asking for the man's name, he finally says it. Ben Mears was a townie who left at a very young age and made a career for himself writing. It seems like he made a career like writing horror-esque books.
Yeah.
So Ben is then directed by the receptionist to a place that allows for him to rent out a room instead of a whole property. The property manager tells him all the ground rules, saying for staying, and shortly after, we see how the town lives their lives on a day-by-day basis. So this is like a very, very small town, from what I picked up on.
Yeah, it's at this point where you and I also made the joke, oh, like another author. Another small town. Like, yeah, that's a common trend. That's a very much a staple in Stephen King's books with Stand By Me. It's, I mean, the list goes on. Yeah. You know, Misery. Mm-hmm. Like, it just goes on. So, but yeah, we then see a bunch of kids in an elementary school, no recess, who are playing a game and watching one of them in their group untie themselves with no hands.
Yeah, so I didn't necessarily word that right. The movie cuts to the elementary school that's in town. I was having an aneurysm reading that, bro. Shut up. I was typing away, okay? I was typing away while the movie was playing. Shut up. Oh, my God. So, yeah, there's a bunch of kids in elementary school. It's during recess, and the new kid is showing a cute little magic trick that he learned, which is somebody ties his hands real good, and he gets to untie himself. But he, obviously, since both hands are tied, he does it with no hands. Yeah. So this new kid is very persistent on having nobody help him, because little that we know, or like later come to find out, is that he's a aspiring magician. Yeah. Right? And as he's trying to undo the knots, we have the school bully come up and throw a punch at him.
This scene was so crazy to me because it reminded me of like a miniature version of you're gonna laugh when I put this out there. Miniature version of like the fight scene, the opening fight scene from the Black Phone. Because these kids are smaller than the ones in Black Phone that are fighting, but this fight was still just as vicious. Like, I'm thinking in my head, I've never seen kids look this small. I don't even know what grade they're in. They're probably not as young.
4th or 5th grade.
Yeah, I don't think they're as young as I'm making them sound like they are, but it looks so funny because they're kind of on the shorter side and they're just like knocking the shit out of each other.
Yeah. It was pretty like...
I never saw a fight at that age that crazy.
I did.
I saw a lot worse though, but as we got older. But
nope, that age too. That was fun.
Really interesting. That's a story for another day, I guess.
Yeah.
The bully Richie is then seen to try to keep going. I'm gonna just let you read this, bro.
Shut up. The bully Richie is then seen to essentially keep going after the kid. But the kid's scrawnier and actually able to get the better of the bully. So we then pan out and we see that none of the teachers are paying attention to the brawl that's unfolding on recess grounds or on the playground. And there's only one teacher that does. However, he's not outside monitoring the kids, quote unquote, monitoring the kids. He's inside grading, right?
Yeah.
So he puts on his jacket, steps out, and breaks up the fight. The older teacher, Mr. Burke,
goated character,
love him, gets the story out of the kids as to how the two, the bully and the scrawnier kid, ended up in a tap-out match. After hearing the stories, he then only tells Mr. Petrie, the scrawnier-looking kid in the exchange, to respect when people tap out and to live up to the word that he gives. Almost like a lesson that comes to haunt him later, if you get what I'm saying. So... the movie then cuts back again to Mr. Straker, who is shown behind the window of his shop, and he watches the 3 main kids from the playground walk their way home. The camera cuts to Ben in the library doing research of all the town events that have happened since he left. So essentially, we come to find out it's around the crash that actually killed his parents and what happened after he left town. I think he left around the age of like 9 or 10. So
it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, essentially. We see just how quickly rumors spread through this town because not even in the same afternoon, we see the librarian tell some other women about Ben and the status that he has within the writing community. Susan, the very same receptionist that we see at the real estate office, makes a comment about going out to the drive-in the same night and does it in a way that grabs Ben's attention. The movie then cuts back to the younger kids that were now walking towards Mark's house. Mark is essentially the first name of Mr. Petrie, the kid that Mr. Burke was calling out in the playground, essentially saying, hey, I get why you defended yourself, but when you give your word, right? So he's then talking to the 2 other kids about how being the new kid doesn't necessarily excuse the bullies of being able to pick on him, that he should stand up for himself and that they should have no fear. So there's another kid by the name of Richie, or I guess Richard, but his older brother calls him Richie. They commend Mark for his bravery, and they also take notice of the fact that he seems very enthralled by things like vampires, werewolves, zombies, the classic like Halloween-esque creatures, right? And shortly after some conversation, the 2 of them end up leaving, saying that they needed to make it home before it gets too dark. The movie is very interesting because it's constantly cutting between scenes, almost like trying to pave the timeline of like how the town is like with different generations. So
yeah,
shortly after this, it cuts back to the drive-in and we watch as Susan and Ben talk about the town, the deeds, both good and bad, that the locals partake in, and find an interest with the other rather quickly. So you kind of see like their love blossom in that moment. Right. Susan makes a comment about how the entire town can fit in the drive-in, and that's why most of the people come in not only to be around each other, but also be apart from each other and in their own world. But Ben gets to hear Susan's background and aspirations, and Ben shares some of his backgrounds as well. We get to hear Ben's backstory from him, how his parents died, leaving town, and also his life when he left until the day he decided to come back. He wanted to do research for a book he's writing soon, and the research will actually be about him.
Almost kind of like a little mini autobiography, I guess, or
Almost, yeah. The movie immediately cuts back to Mr. Straker. And he's driving up to the two kids that were leaving Mark's house, asking the brothers if they need rides. They both decline, but we as the viewer get a weird overall feeling of the way that Mr. Straker is waiting, essentially, and just staring at them, even though the two kids said we're good. If you look into the car mirror when the two younger boys are giving him a response, you actually see Mr. Straker smile before Ralphie turns around to wave goodbye in a very polite way. So the boys' backs are turned, and Ralphie is just like oblivious to this whole thing, right?
Oh, so so it's not Richie, it's Ralphie.
Yeah, I probably misspelled it earlier.
So yeah, Ralphie and Danny. But yeah, that scene was creepy because first of all, it was already creepy, but then when you rewatched it and you pointed out
the smile in the car mirror,
yeah, that made it like.
I knew the hair on the back of my neck was standing up the first watch for a reason,
right? Yeah.
And now I figured out why.
Yeah.
So Ralphie essentially gets taken from his older brother, while the two of them are walking home, causing a small town to suddenly become more cold and turn cold, if you will. You literally see the two brothers are walking down the same trail. Danny is talking to Ralphie, and Mark gave Ralphie a harmonica because Ralphie mentioned that he gets like pretty scared, or I guess implying almost that he has a lot of anxiety.
Right.
Before anxiety was identified the way that it is in today's day and age. And Mark gave him a coping mechanism, a harmonica.
Yeah.
So Ralphie pulls it out, is using it, inhale, exhale, and his older brother is telling him like, hey, I'm starting to get tired of it, stop. And all of a sudden it stops. We as the viewer see why. Mr. Straker was still following the boys as they were walking home and took Ralphie.
Yeah.
No sound made whatsoever. Danny, not even 30 seconds after Ralphie's missing, realizes that he's not behind him and is freaking the fuck out.
Yeah.
And it's insane. Like, seeing the way that Mr. Straker operated is petrifying, to say the very least.
And what made us sad was knowing how early we were in the film and how like much of a side character Ralphie was. It's like we kind of knew that was it.
Yeah,
and that sucked.
Yeah,
you know? But the night of the abduction, we see Mr. Straker from Ralphie's point of view. At first, he mentioned something about how there needs to be a sacrifice before the town can transform. And we as the viewers can kind of get where he's going with this.
Very Nosferatu-esque.
Yes. And Mr. Straker calls out for something, a creature, just something beyond what anything Ralphie probably could have prepared himself for. Calling him Mr. Barlow, and that his servant fulfilled Barlow's duty, and then Straker being the servant. Ralphie is in Eden after some tension is built, and it's kind of a crazy off-screen kill because
you hear the crunches.
And you hear him screaming too. Like it's
not a petrified scream. It's like this is actually happening. It hurts and I'm terrified kind of scream.
It sucks.
Yeah.
It's
actually like heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
The second time wasn't any easier than the first.
Yeah.
Because of this, and like I said earlier, because this is a small town, the movie immediately transitions to looking for Ralphie. So during the search for Ralphie, the town seems to be giving the cold shoulder towards Ben. Matt, the school teacher for Mark, also known as Mr. Burke, tells Ben that the town doesn't do well with new folks and that people don't like how cozy he's gotten with Susan, the townee.
Yeah.
Matt is able to get Ben to agree to come and visit the school during this whole exchange, because I guess Matt is one of the few people who's actually genuinely kind to Ben.
Yeah.
Ralphie's family seems to be in complete shambles since he's been missing, and Danny, Ralphie's older brother, is rather hard on himself and seems to be blaming himself for the disappearance due to it happening on his watch, like literally on his watch. Sorry.
No, I was just like, Susan confides to Ben about her mother and why why they have a strained relationship with each other. And it kind of comes down to a similar aspect to like with Ben, because it's almost like Susan's a little envious of Ben that he got to leave this town.
Yeah.
You know, and she really wants to get out and kind of see things on her own, but her and her mother don't really see eye to eye on that. And the two seem to have this undeniable chemistry, though we really haven't seen them do anything on screen yet, but they're meshing really well.
They are.
And I wanted to make note of this earlier with the whole receptionist scene in the beginning. That was a very, I thought, like, sweet and natural way to kind of introduce two people.
Yeah.
It's not something you see too often in a film. And I thought, like, it was a very joking, sarcastic way, but a very nice, sincere way. You know, because it's, yeah, I think I know what she looked like, not understanding that if she just turned her book around, she wouldn't know. And it's a very cool, like,
it's very, like, coy.
Yeah.
Very realistic.
And you see that here still. Like, they got, like, a little bit of a chemistry thing going on.
They have synergy for sure.
The movie then cuts to Ralphie's brother in his bedroom, and he hears something that catches his attention enough to get him out of the bed and, you know, talking again. And when he makes it outside, we hear the harmonica that Ralphie was using the day of his disappearance. And what makes this even worse is, like, the moon is shining.
Fog's pouring in.
Fog is pouring in. Like, it's...
Yeah.
Us as the viewers are just, like, trying to tell Danny, like, we know you want to save your brother, but go inside.
Like he's gone, bro. There is no bringing him back. Just go.
And after some silence and time passing, the harmonica gets tossed at the older brother's feet. And literally, it looks like something just pulls him up into the sky, right? Like that was a crazy ass. I was not expecting that.
No, you
like,
hear?
I was expecting it, but not in the way it was done.
No. He literally gets lifted off of his feet, but it looks almost like somebody grabbed him by the head and pulled him up.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like a comfortable lift, if you will. And a lot happens in a short period of time, but all I remember is that Danny is now in the hospital.
Yeah.
Dying, and seems to be dying of a certain disorder that involves his body not being able to make enough red blood to carry oxygen as quickly as it should. All they can do now, according to the doctor, is give him blood, do a blood transfusion, and just wait. Danny is later shown to reach towards the blood bag and have labored breathing. He mutters the words thirsty to his mother and is seen to be drinking from said blood bag that is actually attached to him. So the mom actually steps out, asks for a glass of water from the nurse, turns back only to find Danny sinking his teeth into that blood bag.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. Danny actually dies from drinking the blood, and immediately the movie transitions to yet another funeral preparation. This mom's going through it.
She's going through it, bro. Ralphie, Danny, especially in what happened with Danny too. Like, just wish Damien was there to compel her, man.
All right.
The funeral worker Mike is shown taking his lunch next to the service that was prepared for Danny. He ends up knocking out and sleeping until, I guess, night, which is kind of crazy.
Which is insane.
I mean, I can't blame him though, because I've heard people who work like at funerals or cemeteries, they do have like awkward hours. So he gets up to finish the burial, and the camera is focusing on Danny's casket. It's as if you're supposed to see something that's gonna happen soon. And again, you and I were on the couch and we're just like, Mike, go.
Like, leave. Finish bearing and go. Don't take so long. Just go.
There's some pounding on the casket door, and that makes Mike stop what he was doing and investigate why Danny's casket is noisy. And I can't blame him. If you're in a small town, you probably knew who Danny was. Like, maybe there's a slight chance that you would think maybe he's alive.
I mean, hell, they did it during the plague, right? They would bury people. They would leave a bell above your headstone. And if you were still alive, you would ring the bell telling them, hey, you're burying me by mistake. So who knows?
But
maybe they called his time of death a little too early.
But maybe Mike's heart was just too big for a horror movie. So after a few fake outs, Danny attacks Mike, and we see Mike go through a slower version of what Danny went through.
So Mike appears to be rather sickly and weak. He confides to Matt, due to meeting him at a local bar, about how he hasn't been feeling good since the funeral. Mike tells Matt that he doesn't necessarily remember anything after the funeral, and that all he remembers are eyes. Matt tells him to spend the night at his place, thinking that the kid is probably taking a bender and needs a place to crash for the
We
night.
hated that. When Burke said that, you and I were just
I was
like...
screaming.
We were like, not Burke.
I was so mad, but then at the same time, I loved Matt even more because who else would have done that? Everybody was leaving Mike alone. Like he was literally off in a corner in the complete dark, and it took Matt walking up and over and being like, "Hey kid, you good?"
Yeah.
For Mike to even open up. But also at the same time, who knows? Maybe everybody else in the bar was picking up on whatever Mike was putting down, but Matt wasn't picking it up because he was thinking the better of people. Either way,
maybe
Matt is in great lights for this movie, at least to me.
Mr. Burke notices, or Matt notices, a mark on Mike's neck, and we kind of know what those marks are, but neither here nor there. And he asked him about it, or asks him about it. When Mike goes to touch it, they seem to hurt even more. Mike again tells Matt that he doesn't know where the mark came from before leaving the room. Matt closes the window in Matt closes the window in his room. And in the back, we see Mike's eyes suddenly glow, very similar to the way Danny's was.
Yeah, the movie literally shifts over to Matt's house in the bedroom that Matt is leaving Mike to be. So this is where there's a lot more tension being built. And since you and me now know all the tales of the vampire in this universe, we know that Mike is transitioning.
Yeah. We hated that moment. I did not want Burke to die.
No, definitely not. Matt essentially goes downstairs and lights up his pipe and is pacing around the living room. He overhears some noises and goes upstairs to go investigate. Now walking into the room, he can't seem to find Mike, and the window is now wide open. Mind you, like we said earlier, Matt took the time to make sure that the window was closed before leaving the bedroom and letting Mike be. We now know Mike, more likely than not, has completed his turn due to all the signs we've been seeing before. So the movie, with all this tension, cuts back to Ben, and he's in his room with Susan. We know what they did. And his landlord is actually like pounding on the door, letting him know that Matt is waiting for him downstairs. Matt at some point leaves his home, goes to Ben, and asks both Susan and Ben, knowing that Susan is there, which is hilarious to me, small town vibes, I guess, whether or not either of them have a cross or a medallion, being cryptic about the reason why he is so disturbed and why he needs these items. The new couple, along with Matt, drive back to Matt's house, and Matt explains what happened when he left and how he left his house, essentially saying, hey, this is everything that happened up until I left. This is how I left my home. My house wasn't like this when I left and came back. Something's up. Right? So he implies that Mike may be a creature of the night now due to the signs that he has noticed within the last few hours. Matt acknowledges the craziness behind what he's implying, but still tells the couple that they can't deny what he has witnessed.
Now, I wouldn't have done this, but the three of them, walked back into the house. Yep. I guess they want to go see Mike for themselves, the couple that I'm talking about. And they find that Mike is still in the bed. However, he's not moving. After some tension is built, Mike finally responds and tries to attack the team of three. Ben investigates Mike's body and notices that the marks that Matt was talking about earlier are now gone. And there is a fresh drop of blood on the pillowcase.
This is all before Mike takes that attempt of a chomp.
Oh.
Yeah. So Ben tells Matt what to do next and mentions that Matt needs to keep the idea of vampires being out and about in the town on the down low. So the police and the doctor... Oh, no. Mike doesn't attack. I was wrong. Mike is still laying in bed completely still.
Oh, okay.
There's a fresh drop of blood, but we don't know whose it's from. However, Mike's neck is healed.
Gotcha.
So that's when Ben circles. No, that was my bad. So that's when Ben circles around and tells Matt, "Hey, let's keep this theory of the vampires on the down low because I barely believe you," implying that, not really saying it out loud. And this is where the doctor and the police show up investigate Matt's body and determine that Mike is indeed dead. And Matt then starts questioning the doctor about what happened to Danny in a way that makes everybody's curiosity spike as to why.
Yeah. After some weird insinuations, everyone in the room determines that they will need to run some tests to find out what really happened to Mike. The movie then cuts to Mark. Poor Mark, bro. The movie then cuts to Mark with him asleep. Then later having to come face to face with Danny. But it's not really Danny. The way Danny pulled up to Mark's house, bro,
was insane. Insane.
He's floating, so essentially like just flying in the air, but yeah, floating. And his eyes are glowing, very similar to how they were earlier and also with Mike when he transitioned. And he's like knocking on the window, right? That's how he wakes up, Mark. He asks to be let in by Mark and even uses some of his powers to get Mark to do his bidding. But Mark, being the badass that he is actually able to fight back due to a cross in his room repelling Danny. I just feel like Mark and Burke are like the two best characters in this movie.
They are.
The
attacker, or Danny.
Danny brings up the fact that Master Barlow wants to meet him. Mark is able to come due to the cross.
Come to. He comes to.
Come to. Okay. Mark is able to come to due to the fact that the cross is burning a bright white light and is just forcing Danny to be repelled from the room.
So Mark makes a list of how to combat vampires while making a promise to Danny that he will find a way to free him. Mark essentially is using all of his resources, his comics books, his previous knowledge to then sum up the fact that he either needs to kill Barlow, who is the master, or kill all the existing vampires, or just, flee town. These three are the only options.
I actually forgot that Danny called him Master Barlow because I had wondered why Mark right off the bat already knew about
Barlow.
Barlow being the master, but yeah, that makes sense though.
That's the reason why. So Mark creates his own action plan and he gathers all the material. Movie then immediately cuts back to Matt, who is shown to be in his own home, reading vampire books, when Mike appears out of nowhere and is right behind him with eyes glowing, ready to attack. Matt does the same thing that Mark does, which is grab for a cross that is on his desk, and it starts glowing a bright white light, causing Mike to get tossed back into a dark hallway. Like, there's an actual force behind this. Mike continues to fight Matt, saying that he needs to join them to make things easier for them all. Matt still uses the cross and is able to get Mike out completely by revoking his invitation and using the cross to make sure that Mike cannot come back in no matter what. The movie then cuts back to the doctor and the nurse, who is informing everybody that Danny's mother has passed this morning as well. So this family, again, going through it. You had Ralphie die, you had Danny die, the two brothers' mothers passes away, and there's a comment made by the nurse that it's all gotten harder for anybody to get in contact with other people in the lot these days. So it seems like just how quickly we're seeing bodies drop with the people that we know, people off screen are also dropping just as quickly.
Oh.
The doctor is then later seen to be walking up to Matt's house, trying to get him to wake up. And Matt confides to the doctor, Susan and Ben, because the three of them are all there, or I guess the four of them are all there, about the theory of vampires that he has moving into town. The team then decides that in order to determine whether or not Matt's theory is true, they will need to test it out. After much debate, they settle on visiting Danny's mother in the mortuary to determine if she will wake as well or not. Matt, God bless his soul, decides to stay back to further his research, claiming that he needs to know more about Barlow and Straker to determine their relationship fully.
Oh, I know where this is heading.
Yeah. Matt stakes out Straker's home, all while Straker is occupied with another woman in his shop. The movie immediately cuts back to Mark, also being at Straker's home, but with a wooden stake, and he's ready to walk down to the basement to meet Barlow. A jump scare comes up, and it's Matt stopping Mark from continuing his venture. Mark gets ready to tell Matt about his theory on vampires, but Matt tells the kid that he knows, and this is where the hunt begins. Due to Straker closing the basement door on the duo and locking it, the teacher and the student are now forced to walk through the basement in search for another way to escape.
It's pitch black in there.
Completely dark. They find a set of stairs, and it's disconnected. Matt shoots up Mark in hopes of getting free. The light that he was holding up until this point goes out, and Barlow sinks his teeth into Matt.
That was such a crazy shot, by the way.
It was constant, like, flickering on and off, and you and I both know what was going to happen next, but I kept telling myself in the back of my mind, no, it's not going to happen. It's okay. I really like this character.
I did not want Mr. Burke or Matt to...
I did not either.
He was like he came off like the team leader to me.
Yeah.
And it felt very like... Also, he was a pretty tall dude.
Yeah.
So we got to see just how big Barlow is.
Barlow is at least a head and a half taller than Matt.
Yeah. Like, he had to, like, lean all the way down to bite into his neck.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But, the door opens behind Mark, and we hear Matt's last screams, R.I.P. Burke. And Mark gets taken by Straker. We then cut back to the doctor, Ben, and Susan waiting for Danny's mother to wake up again. Now, the doctor is still shown to be skeptical of the whole, like, theory, but she's ready to test all options because, as you mentioned, people are dropping like flies, and this is a small town, so when you get that many people dying off, that's a pretty big red flag.
Yep, and it seems to be by the same disorder that Danny had.
Yeah.
So things are like, a lot of red flags are coming up.
Now, this is the scene that actually got me. And it was because of just the dumbest reason, too, because I don't get that scared watching horror movies, but... So... Susan asked what they're going to do if vampires are real and if Danny's mother rises. And we kind of zoom in on the doctor. She doesn't really say anything. Now, Danny's mother ends up moving under the sheet. I believe like her slipper falls and that just catches everybody off guard. Everyone is just shocked.
Yeah. And
the doctor is freaking out, but they come up with the idea to try to make a cross. And they're doing it with tongue compressors.
Which was insane to me.
The group theorized that they will need to bind the sticks, but not just bind them. They also may need to, I guess, bless it, if you will.
Yeah.
And at this point, there's a scene, I believe, when Danny's mother tackles the doctor. But it's like they were showing... Okay, so they had the camera strictly zoomed in on the cross. And when the cross doesn't work... The doctor drops it, and when she drops it, Danny's mother is already like right at her face and tackles her.
Yeah.
And it was that moment that actually made me jump back. But not because I was scared. I did jump back because it kind of felt like, oh shit, she's tackling me.
Yeah, it still got you though, regardless.
Still got me though. But yes, go ahead.
And I guess this is where Danny's mom is able to actually get the bite on the doctor. But before she can actually chow down, she rambles on about how they can't stop what's coming and that their circle is getting smaller, obviously referring to Matt. Danny's mother then takes that chomp, and we think the doctor is done for. The doctor is like panicking, obviously. Ben and Susan are able to get Mrs. Gilbert or Danny's mother off of the doctor. And Susan, I believe, is able to bring the emergency medicine bag over to the doctor to use. I guess she has a theory that if she uses rabies shot, that she won't be able to get the illness.
Right.
But the rabies shot needs to be administered within 30 minutes. So Susan obviously gets the needle, administers the shot, and doctor is able to bypass the turning, if you will.
Right.
So after all this news and everything calming down, on their way back to Matt's house, Ben is obviously still with Susan and the doctor. He notices that the vampires are already at his house and they are too late to save him. He notices these vampires on Matt's roof.
That was a crazy shot.
That was. He even tells the two girls in the car, turn slowly, don't make it obvious, but when you spot them, you'll know there's people on the roof waiting for us.
Yeah.
And after this, movie immediately cuts back to Mark. He's struggling. He's actually tied up and hanging upside down. And as he's struggling, he's trying to free himself of Mr. Straker. We see that all his attempts of like becoming a magician is actually for the better, because he eventually is able to get free and escapes back into town after killing Straker.
Bro, he fucked him up.
Which is insane to me. Like he stabs him and then bashes his head in.
He got done in by like a 5th grader, bro. Like,
yeah.
The servant of the creature of the night, bro.
This man, Mr. Straker was also all kinds of fucked up. So by all means, Mark, pop off.
Yeah.
Pop the fuck off. Movie cuts back to the priest, who is now reading a Dracula book with Ben, Susan, and the doctor. And they're all telling him whatever they just shared is true about the vampires, town turning, people are dropping left and right, we have to have more crosses, things like that, right?
Now that you mentioned the book, I do want to make note of this. I don't know if you and I have really talked about this, but this movie was one of the few movies that I've seen, and maybe there's others, but one of the few movies that I've seen, if not the only movie that I've seen, that references Dracula as fiction, but the entity they're dealing with is almost exactly like
it's
that fiction.
Parallel.
Yeah, like it's usually in movies, if they have Dracula inside of
another vampire
movie, like I hate to say it, like fucking Vampire Diaries, but
or even Twilight.
When they mention like in Vampire Diaries, they'll mention Dracula and Klaus is like, oh, that fucking pansy, you know what I mean? Like this is the first movie where they have a parallel that is exactly like Dracula, where
no one's being clowned on.
It's the same weaknesses, the same everything. But go
ahead. So obviously he's like holding the Dracula book in his hand, and even after everybody explaining their side of the story, the priest, understandably slow to an extent, seems skeptical about all the information that was told to him. It's not until Mark walks in the group and tells him that Matt is one of the vampires now, to where the priest seems to like adjust his mindset a bit.
Yeah.
Mark continues to tell the group that he killed Mr. Straker and that Barlow is probably the lead vampire. He's like literally spilling all the details. The group gets back into Barlow's house, and that's where they're in for the fight of their life. So at somewhere around this point, the priest is also convinced.
We forgot to mention this, but the priest was also like seemingly like a town,
He is a town drunk.
He's a town drunk.
He's the town drunk. He's constantly thrown into county overnight to become sober. The sheriff will keep him there to make sure that the priest doesn't do anything too compromising, and will let him out the next day. So the priest is very much battling with his faith or his idea of faith, but he's still a priest nonetheless.
And after they get attacked by, funny enough, Mr. Burke in the basement of that house, they end up deciding, okay, yeah, I guess the priest needed that one last bit of confirmation.
Yeah.
So they all start to split up. I think the priest and Mark go back to his house to tell his parents so that they leave. They get picked off by Barlow. And then I think Susan and this is all happening right before night too. Like, they're trying to hit that, right before nightfall.
Yeah.
And then I believe Susan and Ben go to
Susan's mother's
house. And again, they get picked off there. But interesting enough, not by Barlow, by the mother. And I guess there's already vampires living there because the mother is
the replacement for Mr. Barlow. Or not Mr. Barlow, Mr. Straker.
So was she the woman that he was dancing with when Matt was... Okay, so did they already plan to have a second one just in case? That's kind of crazy. Thinking ahead.
Yeah. It wasn't just that, too. The doctor also goes to the sheriff to tell the sheriff, hey, something's up, something's wrong. But we come to find out that the sheriff already knew that something was off and that something was wrong. He was on his way to go out of town because he wasn't ready to deal with this kind of shit. He said, and I quote, "I'm retiring. I'm done. This town's dead. The lot's dead. Get out while you still can." So either people knew and they ran, or everybody ended up turning. One or the other.
Yeah, I have to believe that if there were any survivors, they did run.
Yeah. And this movie, this is something that you and I haven't talked about Salem's Lot. But this movie does a very, very good job of highlighting all the flaws within people in this small town.
Yeah.
Susan, who, born and raised in a small town, has been dreaming of leaving but never left, and then came back because of mom. Still hasn't left because of mom. You have the priest, unironically is a town drunk.
Yeah.
You have, like, the main realtor agent that we see in the beginning of the movie. Turns out he's a workaholic, but at the same time, he's a constant procrastinator and will cheat on his wife.
Yeah.
You have Mark, who is an outsider, but not the kind of outsider you would expect in that kind of day and age. And then you have Ben, who's a townee, left at an early age and came back and is not being accepted by the group. And then you also have Matt, Lara, and one more person who, born and raised in town, has a good education, seems to be a step above the rest, but doesn't take that extra step to make himself be seen as much as he could be. So you see all these flaws within these characters, and you see it come to their detriment almost at the very end.
And that's a very good point, actually, about that movie. And that's probably why I think, liked it so much.
Yeah.
Was the underlying themes of it.
Yeah.
The book is definitely something we're probably going to pick up in the future.
Definitely. I think so.
Collection, yeah. But as Marva pointed out in the notes, they all start getting picked off. And the last 3 that are left before we make to the final 2 later on, but the last 3 are the Doctor, Ben, and Mark. And that's where they realize, like what you just brought up, that a lot of people are either already a vampire or have left because there's no cars anywhere in the town.
There's no cars anywhere. Not just that. When it's time to get to the church, there are the only 3 people there.
Yeah.
I think it's Ben who runs out, and it's because of Susan. Susan at this point has fully transitioned over to being a vampire.
Who was attacked when they went to their house.
Who got attacked whenever she went to her house to try and save her mother. And actually gets expelled out of the church. Because it's holy grounds, right?
Yeah.
So now we know for sure Susan can't be saved. It's just these 3. Ben is running out in complete denial, all for pussy, hoping to get Susan back to bring her back to being human, right?
Yeah.
That's not the case. The town is scattered with people with glowing yellow eyes. So you know for a fact, anybody who is anybody on the roofs, on the roads, in the bushes, you see set of eyes, they're vampires.
That was also a crazy shot.
That was in-fucking-sane. And at this point, I thought to myself, there's no way that Ben's going to make it. And that's fine. I don't need the main character to make it. I need the side characters to make it.
Yeah.
We're good. He still figures out a way to make it.
I forget exactly why, but I know Mark breaks away in the morning.
Yeah.
He leaves them a note, and then he goes, and he actually...
I think he literally has nothing to lose at this point because he watched his parents get picked apart by Barlow.
So he tries to go kill Barlow, but instead he runs into Danny. And this was a pretty big moment for Mark because he is actually able to kill Danny.
Yeah.
And that was very, he made his promise to him that he would set him free.
Funny enough, it's in Mr. Straker's old store.
Yeah. And that's when I think I skipped ahead a little bit. That's when we find out that there's no singular car around. They meet up with Mark. Mark tells them what happened.
Yep.
That's when they decide what place can hold all of the town's cars. And they
remember what Susan said in the beginning?
Yep.
The whole town can fit into the drive-in.
Yep. So they headed the drive-in, and this was another crazy shot where it's not just the fact that the cars are parked in the lot, Marva. It's the fact that it's a bunch of fucking coffins.
The cars are treated as coffins. That's the kicker right there. All the cars are in the drive-in lot. Nobody's inside the car sleeping. Everybody's in the trunk asleep. And then there's one coffin there. Barlow's.
So that was an insane shot, especially with the way they showed it.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe this is also, again, it's always right before nightfall, man. They barely made it there in time.
Which is insane. Who knows? Maybe it's the fall time or the winter time.
Yeah. So it could be, sundown at 4. Never know.
This is California. I don't know where they're at. They're on the East Coast. It's not sundown at 4.
5 o'clock.
Don't give them too much credit.
6 o'clock.
Sure.
But in the midst of them trying to kill a bunch of vampires, I believe Susan's mother comes out with a shotty. She kills the doctor.
She does. She ends up killing the doctor.
I think it actually happens because Ben finds the trunk with Susan in it.
Yep.
But he can't kill her like he is doing the other vampires because of his love for her.
Yep.
So the doctor comes over.
Is ready to take that
and then that's
kill.
when the mom pops up. Stay away from my daughter.
And I think she's actually trying to get Ben, not the doctor, but it's a twofer.
It's a twofer, yeah.
Yeah. Instead of getting Ben, she gets the doctor and she spooks Ben. It's fine.
So then it turns into a fight where basically the son is able to pick off a good portion of the vampires because I think Mark drives the car right through the legs of the sign, right? So
yes and no. You're kind of getting a little ahead of yourself here. Mark ends up playing a crucial role in killing Susan's mother. Because Susan's mother is the last human to be alive, but she's a human serving the vampire. So we all know she's either going to get turned or eaten at some point or killed. Yeah. There are only 3 options for a servant for a vampire, right? Obviously, she takes a ladder. She's killed by Mark, nonetheless. And you have Ben now and Mark, who are trying to figure out a way to combat all the vampires, essentially the whole town, and Barlow at the same time.
Yeah.
You're at the peak of the fight where Ben and Mark are now forced to be separated. Ben is trying to hold off both Susan and Barlow. And Barlow is finding full entertainment in this whole process because he knows that Ben loves Susan. So either Ben's going to die or he's going to join.
In the midst of this, there's also like other vampires popping up too because their trunks are opening
Yep.
while the sun's going down. So.
And like you can feel that tension building. Now, Mark does something very smart, and he's been a very smart character throughout this whole movie. He gets into a car, starts it up, and actually drives the car into the legs of the projection screen.
Yeah.
And that's how he's able to bring more sun time.
Like that last bit of sun to hit a good portion of the lot.
Into the drive-in area. Because the vampires were only popping out due to the shade being provided from the projector. Yeah. I think around this time, this is where Ben has his final standoff with Susan. He's able to finally kill her. When she dies, though, we see tears come out of her eyes, so we know she was conscious of the whole thing. She just couldn't really control her actions. Hive mentality, if you will. And Ben's completely distraught.
Yeah.
However, he doesn't really have that much time to recover because now there's Barlow who he needs to face and completely kill. Hopefully. So I'm pretty sure Ben is able to get a good few hits in. And then Mark plays a pretty crucial role because the two, like Ben and Barlow, are having a standoff at this point. One's trumping the other, but nobody seems to be getting the upper hand, and it's not until Mark's involvement. Mark gets involved, Ben is able to deliver that final kill, and Barlow is now dead.
Yeah.
So any and all remaining vampires in town, gone.
Yeah.
This is where Mark and Ben start to calm down, because obviously when you kill the leader, the rest of them should also follow, right? Nobody else is going to wake up. And I think this is where Ben decides to tell his final goodbyes to the town, because he came in with the sense of learning about who he is and how to build a biography around a city that he didn't spend the majority of his life in. But now he's walking away with an experience that could inspire a series of books, if you will.
Yeah.
And he's taking Mark with him. One, because Mark is one of the only remaining humans of Salem's lot.
Yeah.
And two, I'm pretty sure, at least for me, Mark reminds Ben of himself whenever he was Mark's age.
Mark's also leaving the town at a young age too, like
At a young age as well. Because
alone,
both parents are dead in a very tragic and gruesome event. So you can see the parallels in there.
Yeah.
And the movie ends with the same song that was used to open up the film.
Yeah.
Sundown.
I like this movie a lot, man.
Mm-hmm. Overall, I like this movie a lot because it kept me captivated. It kept me very involved in the story, and I caught myself actually peeking through my fingers. And I don't tend to do that with movies often. It's only movies who are able to build that kind of anticipation and that tension very well. And to me, this movie did a very good job. Now, I know a lot of people didn't enjoy this movie, and I can also understand why, but this is a movie that I found personally entertaining.
Yeah.
So I would give this movie 6.5, 7.
I give it a 7 out of 10.
Yeah. A little harsher than you, funny enough.
You also watched it twice. I watched
1.5.
1.5, yeah.
I watched it twice. First time, I would say I was for sure really hyped. Second time, didn't carry the same hype, but I still enjoyed it nonetheless.
Yeah.
However, I also noticed that by round 2, I could definitely turn this into a background noise movie and a true background noise movie. Not like how I do with Scream.
Yeah.
Where I pretend as if it's going to be background noise, but then 20 minutes in, I'm fully invested.
And you're watching it, yeah. It happens so much.
It's too much. And then we usually end up rewatching the whole franchise again.
And that's why we don't bring you guys new reviews. I'm kidding.
No.
We have watched...
That's not true. We still watch new stuff.
We have watched Death of a Unicorn.
Yes.
So that'll probably be next week's episode.
Mm-hmm.
Looking forward to talking about that. Been watching a lot of interviews recently of the whole cast. So I've been seeing a lot of interesting takes on that stuff. So I can't wait to talk about that movie. So that should be fun. And anyways, man, yeah, this has been Salem's Lot. Let us know down below in the comments what y'all thought about this movie. If y'all liked it as much as we did, or if y'all are a bit harsher on it, and please be honest. Like it's all fun and games.
Yeah.
We're just watching movies here.
MJ and I usually go with the grain with a lot of, like, I guess, overall critic reviews and like audience reviews. But there are a few that he and I will go against the grain, and not on purpose. But I'm curious to see who also thought this movie was good, or who sided with the majority and said, "No, this isn't for me."
So 3 out of 10, bro. It's
Yeah,
trash.
yeah. Because technically, or at least my score is double of 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, let us know what y'all think about Salem's Lot, and we can't wait to talk to y'all next time with Death of a Unicorn. Anyways, it's been real.
Bye.